Hello, and welcome to Echoes of Eden, the last talk in the MEMSA community course series focusing on gardens. I'm going to be talking to you about the use of gardens in early modern revenge tragedy. So over the Easter holiday, I was struck by these images shared on Facebook from the Venerable English College in Rome. It depicts the Circus Siliquastrum, otherwise known as the Judas tree, as it's traditionally maintained that it was from one of these trees that Judas hung himself. It's also known as the love tree, as its leaves are heart-shaped. The images were shared on Maundy Thursday, particularly poignant as the night of the Last Supper when Jesus gave his command to love one another as I have loved you. It is also significantly the night in which Judas would betray Jesus in the gardens of Gethsemane with a kiss. Love or death, the tree is a symbol of beauty, sorrow, and betrayal. This community course on gardens comes at a time when the desire for outdoor space is at its most pressing. We're seeing in our communities those two same presences, that of fear and also the kindness we're seeing extended to one another. I want to thank MEMSA for allowing me the opportunity to share my research with you in the even broader sense that this online platform allows. Love and death are part of my research as I work in the field of late Tudor and early Stuart tragedy. When this year's community course theme of gardens was introduced, I was intrigued by the use of gardens in revenge tragedies across late Tudor and early Stuart dramas. In my talk, I seek to trace a chronology from 1587 with the first English revenge tragedy to 1631 on the Caroline stage. And so, Echoes of Eden, Gardens and Early Modern Revenge Tragedy. From Eve's temptation in Eden to the Gardens of Gethsemane with Judas's betrayal in a kiss, gardens are arguably places where human agency has freer space to roam. Perhaps in this inside-outside space, boundaries are blurred and ripe for transgression. So this session will explore the use of gardens as performative and transformative spaces in early modern tragedy. In 1587, Kid's The Spanish Tragedy marked a turning point in English drama. It's widely accepted as the first play to fully analyse and critically evaluate the equation of revenge. Kid considers revenge's cost and its appetitive escalation. Significantly, the father discovers his son hanged and stabbed in the garden. The garden becomes a place of sacrifice and grief. It becomes a site at odds with its intended function, escape and emotional freedom. Kid's garden is transformed into a symbol of suffering, sacrifice and loss. And the 1997 staging illustrated here on the right-hand side gave a grim echo of Canavasio's take on Judas's suicide. And here we see the moment in the play when the father discovers his son hung. What outcry calls me from my naked bed and chills my throbbing heart with trembling fear, which never danger yet could daunt before? Who calls Hieronymo? Speak, here I am. I did not slumber, therefore 'twas no dream. No, no, it was some woman cried for help. And here within the garden she did cry, and in the garden must I rescue her. But stay, what murderous spectacle is this? A man hanged up, and all the murderers gone, and in my power to lay the guilt on me? This place was made for pleasure, not for death. And then, with the awful realization that it is his son, as he cuts him down. Those garments that he wears, oft have I seen. Alas, it is Horatio, my sweet son. Oh no, that he that whilom was my son. Or was it thou that call'st me from my bed? Oh, speak if any spark of life remain. I am thy father. Who hath slain my son? What savage monster, not of humankind, here hath been glutted by thy harmless blood, and left thy bloody corpse dishonoured here? For me, amidst this dark and deathful shades, to drown thee with an ocean of my tears. And then, as realization has dawned, and the weight of it sinks in. O heavens, why made you night to cover sin? By day this deed of darkness had not been. O earth, why did you not in time devour the vile profaner of this sacred bower? O poor Horatio, what hadst thou misdone, to least thy life hast new begun? O wicked butcher, whatsoe'er thou wert, how couldst thou strangle virtue and desert? I me, most wretched, that have lost my joy in leasing my Horatio, my sweet boy. So we see that Hieronymo is called out of the house and into the garden. He discovers his son's body hanging in the arbour, and observing the incongruous scene, he states, "This place was made for pleasure, not for death." Night has corrupted the garden's purpose and allowed the vile profaner of the sacred bower to damage the domestic life of the family by this proximal outside space. Later in the play, Hieronymo reflects on the scene with his wife and then with a painter as he works upon his revenge. This scene has recently been re-evaluated as potentially having been written by Shakespeare in collaboration with Kidd. And here we see him to his wife reflecting, "This was the tree, I set it of a kernel, and when our hot Spain could not let it grow, but then the infant and human sap began to wither, duly, twice a morning would I, sprinkling it with fountain water, at least it grew, and bore, till at length it grew a gallows, and did bear our son, it bore thy fruit and mine, O wicked, wicked plant." And then to the painter. "Art a painter, canst paint me a tear or a wound, a groan or a sigh? Canst paint me a tree such as this? Stretch thine art, and let their beards be of Judas his own colour, and let their eyebrows jut o'er, in any case observe that. Then, sir, after some violent noise, bring me forth in my shirt and my gown upon mine arm, with my torch in my hand and my sword reared up thus, and with these words, 'What noise is this? Who calls Hieronymo? May it be done?'" We see the impact of Hieronymo's garden discovery continuing here. "Draw me like old Priam of Troy, crying, 'The house is afire, the house is afire,' was the torch over my head. Make me curse, make me rave, make me cry, make me mad, make me well again, make me curse hell, invocate heaven, and in the end leave me in a trance," and so forth. Painter, and this is the end? Oh no, there is no end. The end is death and madness, and I am never better than when I am mad. And so the agony that Hieronymo feels echoes the agony of in the garden of Christ's betrayal by Judas. This calm sanctuary that shares the boundaries with his house has brought a fire with his desire for revenge. The strange fruit he finds there is his murdered son, and the rest of the play is Hieronymo's journey to revenge. And so, from a father revenging the murder of his son, we move to a son being called upon to revenge the murder, with a look into the garden as a place of betrayal in Hamlet. So in Shakespeare's 1601 Hamlet, Hamlet's father is dozing in the orchard. He becomes the victim of his brother's ambition. Perhaps here we see an echo of temptation in the Garden of Eden. Shakespeare presents this disruption of the natural order in a very English echo of Eden itself, the orchard. Here, the garden site of the orchard becomes an inverse fertility. Rather than allowing growth and plenty, it explores the worst in human nature. In the orchard, what surfaces is that which is rotten at the heart of Denmark. And we see the ghost of Hamlet's father is in dialogue with his son, calling him to revenge against this unnatural crime. "Revenge his foul and most unnatural murder." Hamlet. "Murder? Ghost. Murder most foul, strange, and unnatural." Hamlet. "Haste, haste me to know it, that I with wings as swift as meditation or the thoughts of love may sweep to my revenge." The ghost of Hamlet's father calls out the lie surrounding his death. I find the apt, And duller shouldst thou be than the fat weed that roots itself in ease on Leith Wharf, wouldst thou not stir in this. Now, Hamlet, hear, it's given out that sleeping in mine orchard, a serpent stung me. So the whole ear of Denmark is by a forged process of my death rankly abused. But know thou, noble youth, the serpent that did sting thy father's life, now wears his crown. The ghost then, swiftly, for fear of mourning, tells Hamlet the truth of his uncle, and the pouring of poison into his sleeping father's ear. But soft methinks, I smell the morning's air, brief let me be. Sleeping in mine orchard, my custom always in the afternoon, upon my secure hour, thy uncle stole, with juice of cursed Hebanon in a vial, and in the porches of mine ears did pour. Thus was I, sleeping by a brother's hand, of life, of crown, and queen at once dispatched. And so Hamlet goes on with the duty of revenge and his struggle with it. The third play I want to briefly consider is Shirley's 1631 Love's Cruelty. This play explores the dramatic potential of a number of sites, a palace, a tavern, and various characters' lodgings. Significantly, Shirley exploits the garden as a liminal space with the potential for affording secret trysts and assignations. The garden's proximity to the house enables privileged access, facilitates covert meeting, and funnels in tragic characters for the concluding heap of tragedies. In the scene I want to briefly consider, the audience is privy to an illicit relationship between Clariana and Hippolito. Clariana has earlier married Hippolito's friend, Bellamente. By Act 5, Scene 2, the affair between Hippolito and Clariana has been consummated. This scene that we're going to look at takes place in a room in the marital home of Clariana and Bellamente. Clariana has arranged a secret tryst with Hippolito, and her maid, Milena, is to admit him into the house by way of the garden. Shirley uses the garden as a space between the private and the public. The garden acts as a conduit to the domestic space. Let us see. I promised to meet Hippolito this morning in the grove behind the palace to confer about some business concerns. He and my husband had lately had some difference, I know not why. In this convenient absence of Bellamente, he may surely speak with me here. Yet, I'll not willingly have him come hither by the public way. The garden door shall be left open for him, and a clear passage to this chamber. And when Hippolito arrives at the garden, Clariana sees to it that he is swiftly permitted to enter the house. What says Hippolito? Milena, like an honest gentleman, he's at the garden gate. I told him how things were at home. I met him, having expected you so long to come nearer and wait some opportunity to speak with you. Thou art fortunate. Admit him. It is not safe to expect there. And here Clariana suggests that the garden might not be a safe enough place to meet, and he'd better come into the house instead. And you can imagine what follows when Bellamente comes home unexpectedly and finds the two together. It is a tragedy after all. So here, Shirley is using the garden space as an extension or almost as a private waiting room to gain access to the home. And so, to conclude, it would seem that gardens in these tragedies form a site of love, death, beauty, and betrayal. On stage, the garden is a space where characters may take the air and escape the domestic interior, but not without entering into hidden dangers. In contrast to these tragic gardens, the comedies of the period make greater use of parks, such as James Shirley's Hyde Park. Gardens facilitate tragic encounters, but in comedy, they open new possibilities, best exemplified in the new parks for the public under the Stuarts. And that is where I would like to end this talk, with a welcome return to our shared outside spaces and new possibilities. Thank you.